Mic check, mic check. Slipped overboard and I lost myself, and I went drifting into darkness. Woke on the shore, sunshine on my face, sure felt glad to be alive.
Music was the first time I got introduced to a different language other than English. The reading of the notes, the score as it's written, this is the language of music. You can know several languages, but unless you speak music, you don't understand what that piece is all about.
It's gonna rise.
There has always been this really funny joke that we have within our family that my father is essentially like the Jimi Hendrix of technology, because he's always had kind of this wild rock star element. He is driven by curiosity. He is relentless in problem solving.
The process is the same as doing science, curiosity. You know, what if I combine a certain set of chords to a particular rhythm? And this is how discovery happens in music, and it practically happens in the same way in science and technology.
When I think about the fact that my father, someone who grew up in the Jim Crow South, who was able to transform the way that we communicate, the way that we entertain, it's so important because it's not just the invention itself, it's the man behind that invention and what he represents as what I believe is truly the American dream of what is possible.
Prince Edward County in the 1930s was not a good place for people of color. There were restrictions on what Black people were allowed to do relative to the majority population. This was my first experience with racism, although I didn't know what to call it at that time. It was just something that happened to me that did not seem to be fair. One of the reasons that I chose Bell Labs were people that looked like me that I wanted to be like when I grew up. And Link Hawkins was definitely one of them. I went to him and said, Link, would you be my mentor? Would you teach me the ropes, is what I said. And he says, I'll give you all of the information that I have, and I hope you listen to me better than my son does. And I did. As an intern for Bell Labs, the assignment that I was given was to see what I could do to help a group of psychoacousticians that were trying to figure out the integration time of the ear. And in order to do that, they had to put a very sharp, narrow pulse into the ear. But they were using condenser microphones because it was the only microphone that would give that sharp click, but it couldn't be very loud, so very few people could hear it. I found a paper by Germans who described a solid dielectric headphone, had them built. They work beautifully. Until November, when I got a call from Bell Labs saying, these things have stopped working, what should we do? Took the battery out, and the lead accidentally completed the circuit with an oscillator in the headphones, and the headphones sang beautifully. What is going on here? This shouldn't happen. And because it shouldn't happen, it increased my curiosity to the point that nothing else mattered except figuring out what the heck was going on. And there I discovered electrets. We did something totally different because of the relaxation of the dipoles. There didn't seem to be any way to correct for this. So what we did was to look in a different direction. We looked for materials with what we call deep traps, where you need a lot of energy to make that trap open or close. We figured out how to open the trap, jam an electron in, and then close that trap. Now, this electron is now very unhappy because that's the way nature is. It's balanced, even if it's on the moon. They'll find each other. No one had figured out how to make this last longer than 6 months. You could buy electret microphones, but they were only good for 6 months. You had to throw them away and start all over again. Because this was a problem that was well beyond my personal ability to understand, I talked to Gerhard Sessler, whose office was next to mine, and we began to work on this together. Gerhard is my best friend. We've been friends for eons. Although we came from very different backgrounds, we have so much in common. I took my grandfather's watch apart to see how it worked. He took his grandfather's violin apart looking for where the sound came from. Just to show you how connected we were even before we even knew each other. What Sessler and I did was to make the electret microphone a permanent device, one that maintained its constant sensitivity, extrapolated to over 100 years.
When it falls into your knees, when you're breathless from the fight, when hope is a bad, bad word, the river is gonna rise.
The electret originally was designed as a microphone. It has been used in hearing aids, in the telephone, as a microphone for virtually anything you can imagine. It was so popular that from 1966 to 2014, it was the most produced microphone, and there were upwards of 2 billion units made every year.
The electret microphone was instrumental in music because for the first time you could buy a very linear microphone for under $100. It enabled musicians to be able to record their voice in the same quality that you paid many dollars for in a recording studio to do.
When I really sit with the reality that this man, that also happens to be my father, has transformed technology and communication in such a meaningful way, to be totally candid, I didn't believe it at first, you know? I mean, I think that it was probably like Black History Month. I was in the 3rd grade, and my dad came in to speak and talk about, you know, what he had done at Bell Labs and his invention. And I have to say that it was probably only then that I realized, and even just scratched the surface of the rippling effect of his work, because everyone on the planet, regardless of socioeconomic status, identity, demographic, has been impacted by the quality and the ability to enjoy great sound in one way or another.
I am very proud of what I've been able to accomplish, but I didn't do it by myself. I had help along the way. And so I have to give back now because of what I received and what that reception did for me. I want to do the same for other people.
Meeting Jim West was one of the great joys of my life. Jim has been incredibly active, and more than active, I would say effective, in creating programs designed to ensure there's greater access and equity for students of color, particularly learning to go into the STEM fields.
He was the first Black doctor I had ever met, like any medical doctor, like anything, professors. He was the very first. And he thought kind of the way I thought. He's like, get in there, let's see if that works. Let's see what happens. And having someone who kind of like looked like me and like thought like me and approached things the way that I approached things was extremely reaffirming.
It's important to just have people that have different life experiences. I think the lab environment that was fostered by Dr. West, it definitely makes everyone bring their whole selves to the table, their personalities, their life experience, their way of problem solving, and it just makes for a more fun environment as a whole to be in as you're roughing through challenging problems.
The scale of what Dr. West was able to be a part of with being a co-inventor of the electric microphone it's incredible in the impact that it's had on the world. He has such a big and great legacy. I think he should really get a lot of kudos and credit for really going out of his way to do what so many other people are not doing today, and really paying it back, paying it forward with mentorship, with seeking out people who have potential to be great. And I really am appreciative of him sewing into me to be able to know someone like that and to be able to say that I learned from Dr. West. I'm really proud of that.
The most convenient place for me is on the edge. I can fall in the glass, half full of water, or I can fall out the glass, but I'm very happy on that edge. Steeper that edge, the more exciting it is. The survival of human beings is a function of the science that we do. The more you know and the more you understand about science, the less likely you are to mess up the next generation.
So glad you liked it, Dad.